You were in a really bad way, very classic autistic meltdown. And I remember I was exhausted and I said to you, oh my God, Chloé, this is so hard for me. You need to stop. And I remember you just stopped, and in your wise little Chloé words, I think you might have been about 10, you just looked at me and you said, Mum, you think it's really hard for you. Can you imagine how hard it is for me?
Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians in the lands on which we record this podcast, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respect to elders past and present. Hi, and welcome to Boldly Me. I'm Chloé Hayden, and I'm an actor, author, disability activist, and motivational speaker. In this podcast, I'll be chatting to people who are living boldly and are unapologetically themselves. Today we are doing a very special Mother's Day episode, and I thought, who better to get on a very special Mother's Day episode than my mother herself in the flesh. My mum is not just my mother, but she is such an incredible woman. She is a social worker. She is our neurospicy queen. She has recently been awarded as Mama Glitter Tits, which I'm sure she will tell you about in this podcast. I'm so excited to have my mum in studio today. I'm so excited about this podcast. Hello, Sarah Hayden.
Well, hello, Chloé. I have been such a big fan for such a long time. It's such an honour to be here.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I feel like you might have been my fan for a longer time than anyone else. Like maybe time. Like almost 26 years.
Almost your whole life.
That's crazy.
Absolutely.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Wow.
So crazy.
So happy to have you in. Oh my God, long time fan. Love to see it. Mother.
Yes, daughter. Child.
Before we start the episode, I want to ask you what you are currently hyperfixating on.
Harry Styles.
Slay.
Harry's house.
Slay. First of all, you were in the top 0.001%.
I think there was a few more zeros in there.
I don't know how math works, but you were his top fan on Spotify this year. Like your Spotify Wrapped, you were like, congratulations, you are Harry Styles' top fan.
Yeah.
That's a hyperfixation if ever I heard of one.
Absolutely.
And continuing on to that, I may or may not have seen photos of you at Harry Styles' gig, which I may or may not have also been in attendance of with you in said photo. Where's the glitter? It's okay, I got you covered. For those of you who are tuning in via audio and don't have video, I've got a pot of glitter here. My mother, Sarah Lou Hayden, is known for her glitter antics now. Would you like to share the story?
Do you want me to share the story? Do you want to share the story?
Okay, so I took Mum to see Harry Styles a few weeks ago, and she covered herself top to toe, boob to boob in glitter. It was a slay. It was pop-off queen. And then a week later, we went to the premiere of & Juliet, which is a musical, and it's very camp, it's very queer, it's very brilliant, and my mum was my +1 to the musical, and she comes into my room when we were getting ready, and she's like, is this like a sleigh musical? Like, this is like a sleigh musical, right? I was like, yeah, I guess so. And she's like, cool. So, like, glitter boobs? And we get to the music, she's got glitter all over her boobs. She's covered in glitter. She starts hugging everyone. And our dear, lovely friend, Emraciano, she hugged Mum. And Mum christened her glitter boobs all over Em's boobs. And Mum goes, wow, that's so crazy. You must have gotten the memo to put glitter on your boobs. And Em goes, no, babe, that's your glitter. You've just put it on me. So now my mother has been christened as Mama Glitter Tits by the entire community. Also Mama Sladen. So here is your glitter, because I think we cannot have this podcast. Hold up. I think we cannot have this podcast without Mama Glitter Tits Sladen.
I knew I forgot something.
I knew. See, I was like, that could be my mum.
Bit much?
No, I don't think it's not enough. I was like, you could be my mum, but there's not enough glitter on your breast right now.
On that note, can I just say, the day after that went viral on your Insta, I turned up to work the next morning and I had 2 emails from fellow professionals who emailed me, dear Glitter Tits Sladen.
Like other social work professionals.
I didn't
That was like
realise.
your tagline. You know, on like the signature of your email, how it's like from Sarah Hayden. That you
Social
should,
worker?
yeah. Change it to from Mama Glitter Tits, social worker.
Was going to.
Mum, tell us a bit about your professional life. What do you tell us about yourself?
Okay. So, I'm a mum to 5
Love.
amazing children. Eldest is a bit of a superstar. You may have heard of her yourself. And I work as a social worker. So I've been doing that for about 6 years now, particularly focusing on working with autistic people and their families.
Why do you want to work with autistic people, Mum? What got you into what gave you a spark for the autistics?
The autistics. Well, so I guess my journey into becoming a social worker and in particular the interest in autism came from parenting this incredible autistic child.
Oh, stop it.
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess let's talk about that. I was diagnosed when I was 13, but I know that you and Dad have kind of always known that I was a bit different, a bit quirky, if you will. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, I guess when you first realized that I, not necessarily autistic, because I guess we all kind of had a bit of a stigma and stereotype around what autism was. So I think the diagnosis itself was a bit of a surprise. But when you knew I was not like the other children, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I guess so you were obviously our first child. We were relatively young parents, 23 years old, and you came along, and to us you were absolutely and still are utterly perfect. We did notice when you were young that you were a different child, but I just thought, like, we used to tell everybody we referred to you as a quirky genius. And I just thought, obviously, clearly that's just come from my genetics, so why wouldn't you be? You were, from a very young age, you were just different to other kids, but not different, not less. You were different in a good way. Like, instead of reading normal kids' books, you would be reading encyclopedias and reciting the facts about sharks and random things. And you had huge sensory sensitivities where you were really specific about what you did and didn't want to wear. Back then there was a shop, which I don't think is even around anymore, called Pumpkin Patch, and it was like a really cute children's clothing store that had all these really gorgeous taffeta and wool and nylon dresses and skirts and headbands. And, you know, being my first little girl and a young mum, I wanted you to be dressed in all these gorgeous outfits. And every time I bought you one, you would be screaming to pull it off. And you were not happy unless you were wearing a cheap $4 Kmart tracksuit.
Kmart trackies.
Like a polar fleece. I can't even remember. I think we ended up with one by accident somehow. And it was like the one thing that you just loved and wouldn't take off. And eventually Dad was like, just go and buy her a stack of those. And I was like, I am not putting my child in $4 Kmart tracksuits. But that's what we ended up having to do because it was the only time that you were happy and not screaming and not pulling everything off. And it was just little things like that. Like, it's funny, you know, when you were diagnosed and I went through the list, I was like, tick, 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 tick. But at the time, I knew nothing about autism except for maybe Rain Man. And I had never experienced personally knowing an autistic person, certainly not an autistic little girl. And so I had nothing to compare you to either. I was just like, well, this is just Chloé. Like, for me, it was just, this is just Chloé. And I think we kind of very quickly started adapting our parenting style around what you needed by you kind of telling us. You were always you knew absolutely what you would or wouldn't want or what you'd accept. As I said, right down to you'd put on a pair of tights and you would scream blue murder until I pulled those tights off, and then you were as happy as anything. So it was like very black and white what you would accept and what you wouldn't.
Obviously, growing up, you and Dad and I think our entire family knew that I was different. Did you... First of all, you'd heard of the word autism before.
I'd heard of it, but literally, like, if you had have asked me back then what autism was, I would have literally said Rain Man.
Yeah,
like, that was all I knew about people with autism. Like, it would never in a million years have occurred to me that you could be autistic. And I don't even know whether I thought you were that like I knew you were different to other kids, but it was more just like it was always in positive ways.
It's like she's different, but she's not autistic.
She's not weird different. She's not like that different. She's just different. I just thought, honestly, like I always put it down to, and I kind of found myself telling people this all the time. So almost like I was explaining or justifying what you did. Like Chloe's really smart, or she's a genius, because you were.
Right.
Like, other kids were carrying around, board back books with a picture of a balloon and spelling out words or colours, and you were literally like trying to explain to people how many different shark species there were and, what waters of the world they lived in. And it was like you would go to bed at night with encyclopedias in bed.
So getting up to the actual diagnosis, I've told the story a few times, but I've always told it from a third perspective, because I actually wasn't in the room when you and Dad were told, hey, maybe there's something a little bit funky going on here.
Yeah.
And I've always said it from the third perspective of my teacher called my parents in for a meeting that I wasn't invited to.
Yeah.
Invite us into the meeting, Mum.
Wow. So it wasn't probably a single moment. It happened probably over the course. It was really when you hit high school where things like
so you just kept on getting like phone calls or whatever from them.
Primary school had been horrendous, as you know, because you were there. We trialled so many different primary schools. There was school refusal for years. You hated it. You were still crying in grade 6 like what preps do on their first day of school about not wanting to go to school. You just wanted to stay home with me.
And in my defence, I had good reason to be crying at school.
Absolutely, you did. Absolutely. And yeah, things just kind of went from bad to worse in high school. High school tends to be very different, much bigger expectations. The girls often get meaner, nastier. You were picked on relentlessly. There's a lot more autonomy expected of a child. I think when they get to high school, they're kind of expected to be more grown up and more in control of their belongings and organised and all of the things that you just were not.
And even just social cues and how to talk with kids.
And being cool. Like you just know when you're kind of 13, 14, you know what's cool and you know how to fit in. Even if you kind of don't, you still at least make an effort.
Do in order to exist and survive in that society.
You didn't give a shit what was cool, what was expected of you. You just did your own thing. Exactly like when you were little, you just did your own thing, and that was just not accepted by teenage girls at all. So I guess, like it happened, I guess it kind of happened and then it snowballed really quickly where we were getting almost daily calls from school, or you would turn up home from school. I can remember one day you were catching a bus for a while and you walked in the door. It was a cold, like muddy winter's day, and you just walked in with your stockings and your kilt on and no shoes. And I just said, Chloe, where are your shoes? And you just said, I don't know. And I said, did you leave them on the bus? And you said, no, I didn't hop on the bus with them. Like somehow you'd lost them at school and just hopped on the bus and come home and then walked home. And when I contacted the school, they said you might want to come and look at lost property. And we went to lost property, and pretty much the whole of lost property was Chloe Hayden, Chloe Hayden, Chloe Hayden. Every book, pencil case, lunchbox, jumpers, shoes.
The lost property to autism diagnosis pipeline.
Literally, that was it. It was just like, oh my gosh, that's everything that Chloe has ever owned since starting high school. And it was just disorganisation. It was chaotic. It was, and they were just saying a lot of things about you being like rude or argumentative. And I'm like, Chloe is not rude or argumentative. You were the least likely person to do that. But what it was is actually you always had a really strong social justice heart, and you wouldn't allow things to be said or done that weren't right. And so you would correct teachers, and of course teachers do not like
oh my God, I got in trouble for that all the time.
So it was one teacher in particular who just said to me one day, I was speaking to them about all the, I guess, problems we were having with you at school, and they said, oh, have you ever thought about taking Chloe to an educational psychologist? And I was like, what's an educational psychologist, and why would we want to take our genius child to an educational psychologist? Anyway, we did make an appointment, and within the very first appointment that we had with this amazing woman who does actually have a special interest in autism, so it's probably why the school told me to go and see her in particular, looking back. She did. She just looked at me and she said, oh, obviously we have a lot of diagnostic criteria to meet and go through, and we'll have a lot more appointments over the coming months, but I can tell you right now that Chloe, then it was Asperger's. They said Chloe has Asperger's, which now is, roughly known as level 1 autism. And I was like, Asperger's, what's that? And she said autism. And I was like, autism? My child is not autistic. I was like,
Right, because you had the idea that autism was like Rain Man.
But then part of me was also like, well, Asperger's, so it's not like as bad as autism. It's not autism. It's not actually autism. It's like, what's Asperger's? It must be like just like a little touch.
Yeah. Oh, I heard Einstein has that.
Yeah, exactly. It's oh shit. He's a quirky genius. So yeah, Dad actually wasn't with me. You were with me, and I think I was so taken aback because it was like 13 years of your life of misery in education just came flooding back, and I actually cried. I cried so much, and I know you often talk about it in talks and stuff and kind of go, oh, Mum cried when she found out I was autistic. And it wasn't I cried because I found out you were autistic. I cried for the grief of knowing that we had gotten so long.
Yeah.
And, we're an educated family. My dad's a doctor, my mum was a nurse. I was studying nursing and midwifery and now a social worker. Like, we've got a lot of medical professionals in the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I was like, how on earth did we get to this age? And looking back at all of the things that you struggled with right from when you were a baby, it was like, oh my God, it was like this light bulb moment of, she gave me a handbook by Tony Atwood on, I think it was basically the Asperger's Bible kind of thing. And I was flicking through it and I was just like, oh my gosh, you are literally every single, you're a textbook.
Classic.
Yeah. A textbook autistic girl.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was devastated because I was like, how did we miss that? How different could your life have been? You'd been such a miserable child because life wasn't accommodating what you needed.
Yeah. I think it's important to preface as well that at the time, I think for yourself, and I'm sure many parents that have autistic children or are diagnosed themselves, there is a lot of internalized ableism there. And similar to what you were saying, there's that like, oh, she's not autistic, she has Asperger's. So it's different. And
it's okay.
Yeah. And I think there's that internalized ableism of differentiating the two. And obviously now there isn't a differentiation anymore. We know that there actually isn't a difference. And again, I think that there's a lot of discussion about this right now, but even levels of autism, an autistic person's level of functioning changes minutely, daily, based on their habitat, based on where they live, based on
how burnt out they are.
And based on social factors, their like
how
gender, their race, how accommodated they are, their living situation, all of that sort of jazz. So I think it is really important, first of all, to preface that was obviously, how long ago was that? 12 years ago that I got diagnosed. So that was a 12-year ago understanding of autism.
Absolutely.
What was it like for you, or how, I guess, did you actually come to a more positive understanding of autism? And what was it like for you and other? Because I know that there was my friends and family friends as well that possibly didn't have very kind or positive words to say when they found out that I was autistic, or when you told people that I was autistic. How did you deal with that?
I think for me, if anyone knows me, they know that probably first and foremost, I'm the fiercest mama bear.
Oh yeah.
Ever.
You're scary as shit.
You've got some stories. For me, I think I just went straight into like fierce mama bear protective mode, and part of me felt like, oh my gosh, I've got 13 years to make up of parenting my child. And I wouldn't say I parented you wrong at all, because I think I adjusted everything I could, but I didn't understand that, I would have been advocating far harder at the school. I would have pulled you out of school a lot earlier than I did, had I known how deeply miserable you were and it was just not going to change. And that school was certainly then, in my opinion, the ones we went to were not accommodating for autism at all, and were doing nothing to adjust. So I think for me, I just went straight to educating myself, and by educating myself, I was educating everyone around me. I just became your biggest protector and supporter. And I think the biggest thing, I found, like, I had so many people who were like, actually sympathy, like, oh, you poor thing, you've just found out your child's autistic.
Yeah.
I was like,
you're so strong.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's just received a label for the same person. It's not like she just received an awful
like a lethal diagnosis.
It's
like
something
she's
that's
literally
change her
always
life.
been this.
Yeah,
now, and
you just have a name.
This is what I say, and I get messages, and you're probably the same. I get messages literally every day from parents being like, "Oh, my kid's autistic, but they don't know yet.
Yeah,
I haven't told them, and like I'm scared of telling them because I don't want them to have a label. Like your kid has a label already.
Yeah,
people label things because we're dumb and stupid, and we have to label everything because that's what makes our little human pea brains make sense of the world.
Yeah,
and right now, I know my label in school was doesn't fit in,
Disorganised.
stupid, the R word, like disorganized, loser, stupid. And I got called all of these horrible words. They were my labels. And then when I got my diagnosis, my label was autism. And it's like, I chose this label myself now. This label is my label. You can't put those labels on me.
Yeah.
And I think people are scared of that and people don't like that. Like the outside community doesn't like it because it takes their autonomy away from my autonomy. I have autonomy over my own brain and over my own label now, and people don't like that because they don't like disabled people having autonomy over who they are.
Yeah.
And I think to parents that are like, oh, do I tell my kid that they're autistic? Like it might be about, there can never be a negative with you telling your child
Absolutely.
what their brain is.
Yeah. And it's flipping it as well. Like I say to people all the time, it's not a negative, it's actually a positive. Like
100%.
I honestly mean
There's
it
no
when I
negatives.
say
Yeah.
the most interesting, creative, awesome people are neurodivergent. Like it's actually really positive that you've got that diagnosis for yourself or your child
And even if we are looking at the struggles that we do have, now we have a label for those struggles, therefore we can accommodate
we can
them,
support them.
you know?
Absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah, and even with being diagnosed as ADHD, like my executive functioning is horrible. I don't have any executive functioning. And for a long time, my label was I'm lazy. I can't do anything. Why can't I do this? Like I feel like I'm possessed with my own brain. And now it's like, oh, I'm actually ADHD. My brain literally doesn't have the chemicals for
And
that.
you can
so
put
it's also an
in place to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And now
you know
I've
what
got
you
my
need.
OT and I've got my psych and my therapist and I've got people that go, hey, your brain literally doesn't work like this. It is impossible
So
for
we
you
need to do this.
So let's
Yeah.
actually put systems in place to help you get
Not
there.
to mention the fact that workplaces and schools legally have to
Yes.
make
which
adjustments
is a massive one.
if you have a diagnosis.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you can get the support that you need.
Yeah, 100%. What do you like about our relationship?
I love so much about our relationship. I feel like the older you've got, the more we've become just like great friends, like in the last
I
few
think
weeks.
this is very typical for teenagers, but I think we butted heads a lot when I was 16-ish. And
Yeah.
I think it's because we're both undiagnosed ADHD.
Probably.
And we were both so emotionally dysregulated and so no executive function. So the two of us were just like, ah! But now we're both ADHD besties.
Absolutely. But we just have so much fun. I think we both have such a fun, we just enjoy fun. Like in the last few weeks, we've gone to Ed Sheeran, we've gone to Harry Styles, we went and saw the Juliet premiere where we're singing and dancing all night. Like we legitimately have so much fun. But I think beyond that, like I'm genuinely every day in awe and just so inspired by what you do. It just brings me so much joy to see that you are just living your life so boldly and so accepting of who you are and encouraging other people to be accepting of who they are. And I'm in awe every day.
Thank you, Mama. That's so nice. I'll pay you for saying that later. What advice do you have for other parents, well, parents of autistic people, parents of other disabled people, and just parents, period?
Parents, period. I think our most important role as parents is to love and support and protect and nurture and honour who you are and allow you to be exactly who you're meant to be, regardless of what that is, regardless of whether that's different to what we thought
and what is
it would
expected
be or what's expected or our values or anything at all. It's like we need to encourage you to have the strength to be able to actually be all that you were created to be, whatever that looks like. And, you often hear about parents talking about how it's not, whatever it is that they're dealing with is not what they expected their child to be, or it's different to what, what they thought. And I think one of the things that really stands out from a memory of your childhood where I think it was probably before you were diagnosed. It was before you were diagnosed, and you were having what I would have said at the time was a massive tantrum, but I now clearly know it was a massive meltdown, a very classic autistic meltdown. And it had been going for hours where you were crying and you were in a really bad way. And I remember I was exhausted and I said to you, oh my God, Chloé, this is so hard for me. You need to stop. And I remember you just stopped, and in your wise little Chloé words, I think you might have been about 10, you just looked at me and you said, Mum, you think it's really hard for you. Can you imagine how hard it is for me? And I remember just going, oh my gosh. As parents, and I know you often refer to autism mums, as parents, particularly in the autistic community or, disabled communities, it's often about their experience, like the parents and how hard it is for them, or, oh my gosh, it's so hard. My life is so hard.
Oh my God, God gives the hardest battles to the strongest autism mamas. Like, shut up, girl.
And I know for me, that was such a sobering moment where I just then laid down and probably gave you a big bear hug, weighted blanket before I knew that, and you settled and calmed. And it was just like, I've never forgotten that. And I've said that to so many other parents that have said, I find it so hard to deal with, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's so true, someone else thinks it's hard to deal with, but it's like, what do you think that child is going through to have to get to that stage? What is it that we can do? So it's all about making your world as safe place as you can, but giving you permission, no matter what it is, for you to be exactly who you're meant to be and encourage it. And I think, like you said before, it's really concerning when people are like, oh, I'm not sure if I should tell my child they're autistic. Hell yes. Celebrate it,
100%.
Like,
make it a
so
party.
Cool. Look how cool
Congrats
this is.
on the autism.
Exactly. And literally I say that to people now, and I'm like, I love that they've got people who are so cool and so colourful like you to look up to go, oh my gosh, how cool is this? You're exactly like Chloé. Mm-hmm. You're autistic. And we get, you and I both get people all the time contacting us saying their kid has gone to school with your book, saying how excited they are because they're exactly the same as you. Their parents have just kind of told them, hey, Chloé, well, you've actually got the same. I love that. We didn't have that 12, 13 years ago when you were diagnosed. I couldn't identify one person in the media that you could kind of go, oh, it's okay, Chloé, it's exactly
and that was a massive issue. And I talk about this all the time. There wasn't anyone in the media that, like, what was in the media was Sheldon Cooper and Rain Man and What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Yeah. Like, there wasn't representation in the media.
Not really people you want to say to your kid, that's really cool, you can be like
them. Exactly, and you can't be what you can't see.
Exactly
so,
right.
At the time, something that I really, really admire you and Dad for is that you always looked at what my positives were.
Totally.
You never looked at my can'ts. You always looked at my cans long before I was diagnosed, and you've done that with all 5 of us.
Absolutely.
And I think that's that first part is a massive thing for parents to understand. Like, your child, autistic or typical or whatever it is not created to meet the expectations of the society that we've put into place.
Or us as parents.
Exactly, which also have this expectation, which also leads on to another massive point, similar to what I just said about you can't be what you can't see. Yes, that means representation in the media, but that also means in your own household.
Absolutely.
And something I think is so, so important, particularly as women, we have been taught to put yourself down and don't give yourself compliments and to meet expectations, and that you have to be a certain way. And yeah, exactly. And like the amount of young people that growing up hear their mums go, oh, I look really fat today. Like, don't take a photo of me. I don't want photos of me today. I look really ugly. I haven't got my makeup on. Or, I'm stupid because I can't do math. Like, ask your dad and stuff like that. Like, women are taught from the moment that we're born, make yourself less. And young girls and young people grow up seeing their mums and seeing their parents and seeing their grown-ups talking badly about themselves. And, like, as a kid, like, our mum is the most beautiful person in the whole world. It's like, oh my, I love you. And, like, I am part of you. So if you're talking badly about yourself, and I have those traits in me because I am part of you, I'm not going to be able to see the positives in myself either. So, yes, talking positives and seeing the cans in your child is so immensely important, but that starts within yourself as well. And I think that's so important that as a parent and as a human being in general, speak positively about yourself. Look at your own cans instead of your can'ts, because that's going to project onto your children and everyone in your life as well. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Absolutely.
Is to look at your positives and look at what you can do, because your cans, like all of us, are more important than our can'ts. And it is so important that you project that onto yourself. I've got a mirror in my room where I write down my positives and I take away those negative thoughts, and I see that every day and I speak it out loud every day, and it's helped so immensely. And I think as mums, as parents, as grown-ups in kids' lives, it is so important that we start within ourselves, because we can't project outwards unless it's starting from the inwards.
Totally. Slay queen.
Slay queen.
And that is one of the biggest problems of our education system. I remember at the end of primary school, one of your teachers said to me, oh, really concerned about Chloé. She actually doesn't know any of her times tables. And I kind of laughed and went, well, it doesn't really matter. And they're like, oh, no, it does, because she can't go up the next year unless she knows all of her times tables. I said, yeah, but have you seen her writing and her drawing? And they were like, yeah, but she can't do her times tables and she can't read a clock. And I was like, but it doesn't really matter. Like, we've got we've now got iPhones with
Yeah, we've got
calculators on them for
digital
everything.
camera,
Literally,
digital clocks. Like, we don't need.
Not many people recite their times tables, for a living. And I think for us, that's always been, and that was, again, before you were diagnosed, but I've always been like, well, it doesn't really matter. But more so, now more than ever, I'm like, Chloe's 25. You still can't read a clock.
No.
Like, you ask your little sister, what's the time?
Yeah.
And you don't know times tables. It doesn't matter. I'd prefer to be doing what you're doing than knowing times tables and reading the clock.
Pop
and
up, period.
It's just where we kind of categorize people and make it like you're not intelligent.
We see intelligence as one brand of intelligence.
Exactly right. And it's like, it's so boring. Times tables
also,
are so boring. Of course, your brain doesn't have time to hold times tables because it's holding glitter and...
I got like a potato van to run. I can't do times tables. Mum, you are such a bold person, and I'm very convinced that my boldness is inherently from you. I think that came out with me. That was said quite weirdly, but I think my boldness is because of you. I think
that's, I think, the greatest compliment anyone's ever given me.
I think it's very genetic.
I agree, though.
But so true.
So true. Slay queens.
Slay queen. I want to ask you about some of your boldnesses.
Okay.
So I have got a Boldly Me 3, which are 3 quick questions that I ask all of my guests, and it is about what makes you bold. Are you ready for your 3 things? Okay. Yep. Number 1, what is one song that never fails to make you feel happy?
Anything from Harry's House by Harry Styles.
She said top 0.001%.
0.00001%.
Sorry, I'll show myself out.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you don't know maths. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you knew your times tables, you would have known your percentages.
Sorry, God. Sorry.
Top fan. That's all you need to know. Top fan.
Top fan. Number
Spotify
2
said it, so it's true.
Yes, exactly. No, you have the analytics.
Absolutely.
You are the Harry fan. Number 2, what is one piece of advice that you would give your 13-year-old self?
I would love to have been told the same things that we tell you, just to be
who you are,
you are, and being that's okay, and to be bold and be brave and be okay with who you are. Looking back at the age of 13, oh my gosh, I was just such a chameleon, blending in with whoever I was hanging around with.
Yes.
I had no idea who I was or what I was meant to be. I was so insecure, and that led me to awful relationships, and it just I just wish that I could look back and just go, you are enough, you are okay, you are going to be all right, you will know who you are,
and you're going to be okay because of who you are, not because of what you can be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Number 3 is if you could be any Disney character, and I've written you letters of what characters I think you would be, but I want to know your answer. If you could be any Disney character, who would you be and why?
I think I'm going to say Moana.
Ooh.
Because she defies stereotypes.
I love it.
In so many ways. Firstly, she's a curvy girl. She's not like a thin Disney princess. She's got curves, girl. She could put glitter on. But she was such a queen. She was a fierce leader, an environmentalist.
And stepped away from what her family and what tradition told her she had to do.
She became the chief. Her name means ocean, and I love the beach. Ocean is my place. I'm a mermaid at heart. And yeah, she's just so cool. She's just so cool. Such a strong, fearless, bold character.
I love it.
Love her. And she's a Polynesian princess. Oh my gosh. Beautiful.
I think that's the best answer we've had. I love it.
You.
Mum, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It has been so much fun having you.
Thank you so much. Now tell me what you want for dinner.
Dal. It's so good to have my beautiful mum in studio today. Isn't she amazing? I love her. She is, I said this to her, but I'm going to say it now that she's out of studio. It is so nice to have such a strong, bold woman in my life. And I know that she has been so fundamental to finding my own strong, bold woman within myself as well. There is one point that I do really want to touch on in the chat that I had with my mum today. 2 points, actually. I think the first one is my family is very, very strength-based. We speak a lot about our strengths and the positives of our diagnosis and of our disabilities. But I think it is really important to note as well that there are struggles that come with being disabled, and we're not immune to them, and we discuss them very, very broadly in our house. And I do think it is really important that we do just touch on the fact, and that I do let you guys know that, yes, I see autism and ADHD as my greatest superpower, but there is also kryptonite that comes along with that superpower. And I think it is really important to understand that it is so great to look at the positives, but it is also important to understand that there are also the negatives that come with it. And that's okay. That's a part of human existence. And I think the other thing that I really, really want to drill home, particularly to the mums, to the grown-ups, to the parents of children that are listening to this episode right now, you're doing fine. You are doing so good. And I know that we are often taught, particularly as mums, I know I'm obviously not a mother. My greatest responsibility is a blind axolotl, but I know that there is such a societal expectation that we have to be drilling on ourselves and have to be, oh, you know, there's better mums than me and I'm not doing a good enough job and I should be doing a better job. You're doing fine. And it is so important that you praise yourself enough and understand that you are doing a good job. And understand that it's okay to hype yourself up sometimes. You're doing great. If you're a mum and you need to hear this right now, I'm going to say it for you. You're doing bloody brilliant, dude. Pop off, Slay Queen. Pop your pussy. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Thank you so much for listening to Boldly Me. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate and review the show on your podcast app if it lets you, and tell a friend. Let a mum friend know. Tell your mum. Get your mum to listen to this podcast. Most importantly, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and do whatever makes you feel happy. Bye.